Hello, welcome to Interdependent Study, our podcast where we engage in the learning and unlearning work for collective liberation. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Damien. Thank you so much for joining us today. Each week, we'll bring something new to the table and discuss our thoughts and feelings about it through the lenses of who we are and where we can go for a more just society.
We want Interdependent Study to be a space where we're always learning with one another. Damien, you're up this week.
Yes, sir.
What are you bringing to the table today?
So I've brought a piece from In These Times for us to talk about today. The piece is called In the Face of Overwhelm. And it was written by Asha Ransby-Sporn, who, as I mentioned last week, is an organizer and writer and co-founder of an organization called Black Youth Project 100. And this piece was great, wasn't it?
Yeah. Although I was confused. Are there things I'm supposed to be overwhelmed about right now?
Yes.
Are there overwhelming things happening?
Oh, yeah, just a few, just a couple.
Well, maybe we'll get into that.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Okay.
This piece was great, I think, because it brilliantly articulated the real feelings that many of us are experiencing right now, which is feeling overwhelmed and just feeling overwhelmed by the rapid fire onslaught that has been going on for the past few weeks. It's only been weeks, which is wild to think about. The past few weeks of the Trump administration and everything it has been doing since the inauguration, which again was just last month. And so in this piece, Asha also offers us a call to action for what we can and must do, as this piece is titled, In the Face of That Feeling of Being Overwhelmed, but I think also to meet the moment head on. And so one of the things that Asha says in this piece that actually kind of made me chuckle, because I do this first part myself, but she really ends her thought and her statement with some pretty profound words and thinking about that call to action I talked about. So she says, quote, "We often talk or joke about the kind of crises that spark real societal collapse as things that loom, that we are on the brink of. Endless memes say the world is about to end. But climate disasters are already here. New technology has been used for political manipulation and social control. And the world witnessed a genocide in Gaza we could not stop. Now, what we're seeing unfold in the federal government, a billionaire with his eyes set on being CEO of the world, quite literally taking over the machinations of government, is what many are calling a full-on coup. We owe it to each other not only to reject the idea that there is nothing we can do, but to resist these attempts to overwhelm, distract, and divide us." And I just love that ending there. The things that we must do and what we owe each other in this moment, despite everything that is happening. I found that so profound. So, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this piece to the table. So yeah, let's do it. Where do you want to start? What did you think of this piece?
I thought it was great. And I now remember what I'm overwhelmed about.
Yeah,
so,
there you go.
Thank you for your introduction of the piece.
I like that. You're trying to protect your piece a little bit there.
Just blocking everything. Yes. A little compartmentalization never hurt nobody. That's not true. All right, well, yeah, let's get into this. I think what's happening right now is happening so quickly that it's hard to keep up with all the stuff that's being done. And it's hard to tell what's real and what's being done to push a legal or judicial boundary or float a test balloon to see how people will react. Not that those things aren't real, but they're things that are not enforceable or things that they can't do that they say they're going to do.
Right.
And does this mean they're going to do them or does it not mean they're going to do them? And trying to parse through all of that is also part of the overwhelm. And that feeling of being overwhelmed is the point. And how we react to that overwhelmed feeling is a huge part of this. You know, she talks about this and references it in the quote you just said, but we could stick our heads in the sand, we can run away from these things, or we can fight in the ways that are available to us.
Absolutely.
And I think that quote you shared is a great encapsulation of the point of the article.
Yes.
And I think it's important to say that we need a ton of these invitations to act, to go out to people.
Yeah.
And so we know that one of the ways to break through that feeling of being overwhelmed is to invite people into clear actions to join.
Yes.
And so this article, I think, is one of those invitations, and I hope people get and see a whole lot more of those invitations from other organizations in their community or nationwide organizations or labor unions or whatever, and find ways to respond to those invitations and plug in and do things, whether it's rallies or contacting people or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And I feel like that action that you speak of really meets the moment that we find ourselves in because of the shock and awe nature that is this administration and what it is doing. And I think you're absolutely right. Like the test balloons and the testing the limits. I mean, it's really difficult every day when we're bombarded with these push notifications and news articles. Yeah. And I'm sure lots of folks are in the same boat that I'm in. I know you're in it too. We get, text messages from friends and family, and it's like, look at this. And it's just so overwhelming. The whole point of this is, and Asha's great points here are to meet the moment. And I love your point there about doing whatever it is that you can to dial in,
right,
and to join. So, speaking of the shock and awe of it, one of the things that I appreciated in this piece was how Asha named the fact that Project 2025 and the work of Project 2025 hasn't come out of left field.
No, it came out of right field. Sorry to interrupt your point there, but I just felt like that was a prime opportunity for a joke, which is another way to deal with overwhelm.
Prepared for
nervous
that.
Jokes
came out of right field. Wow, I think that's important to acknowledge.
Far right field,
yeah, the far right field. In fact, this Project 2025 playbook and variations of it have been a project that has been built and implemented brick by brick and piece by piece by the far right, as you mentioned, and the ultra wealthy. So Asha says, quote, to give a little context to what's unfolding, Project 2025 didn't come out of a right-wing plot in the past few years or even since the Trump MAGA era. This blueprint for radical right-wing change is a culmination of a multi-decade strategy to deregulate capitalism and gut all parts of the government that get in the way of maximum profit, exploitation, and wealth accumulation. And it's funded by old money billionaires like the Koch brothers and Joseph Coors, beer baron and earliest Heritage Foundation donor. These mega donors represent varying brands of far-right political philosophy, but are unified by their shared material interest in replacing government as we know it with rule by brute capitalist force. And so, there's no doubt in my mind that we're living through an overwhelming assault of Project 2025 tearing this country apart in so many ways. But I think that context is helpful, at least it was for me, in reminding us that we've been here before, right? We've experienced our government and our leaders work in ways that don't represent us, that aren't the things that we want to see happen. And so what it made me think of is, while our feelings of being overwhelmed are totally valid and what we're experiencing right now feels especially disgusting and vile and hateful. And we've sort of talked about that over the past few weeks here. That context to me was really important, right? To, again, remember where we've been, the movements that have come before where we are now and the work that has happened to fight fascism, fight racism, fight white supremacy, all of that. We've been here before, and we've got to tap into that to get to the place that we need to be.
Yeah, this is a big moment for Project 2025, and the billionaire classes who stand to profit from this moment, either through power accumulation or money or both. Yeah. And as you mentioned, we've been building to this moment for decades. We've been here before, and this is happening on the backs of all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So Asha says, quote, we should be naming the moment for what it is, a transformational win for the billionaire right. As if the neoliberal era's outsourcing of essential public good functions of government to private companies wasn't destructive enough, direct government takeover by the richest man in the world is a nightmarish escalation of how bad can get when the rug is pulled all the way out from under. And that's true. Yes. And I want to build on the point she's making here in the middle. She says the, quote, neoliberal era's outsourcing of essential public good functions.
Yes.
This is what has brought us to this point. The government functions that are related to the public good have been eroded to the point of being untrustworthy. And that's part of the point. That's been the plan the whole way. And so where we are now is building on those decades of eroding that public good and therefore the public trust. So as a public, we don't care as much when those things go away, or we come to believe that the spending there is wasteful because it's not effective, or we believe it's not effective. And so this moment is an amplification and an acceleration of neoliberal economic policies of the last several decades that defund public good and make us all out on our own as rugged individuals in this economy that isn't built for most of us, is not built for the vast majority of us, and is only built for the people who have wealth already and can accumulate more wealth. And so this is all at the expense of people who are served by these programs or who work there or
good point.
Whatever else. These are functions that are going to go away that will hurt people.
Yes.
Like that they're not there anymore, because we've already seen how people have been hurt by them being eroded over the last several decades.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And I also love you mentioned the word or the term there, like rugged individualism, and the ways in which over the years of this erosion of our trust in the government and erasing these public good functions, there's also simultaneously been this effort by the government and the far right to make us less connected to one another, and to make us see the value in these things that are, if it's supporting you in this community over here, it's also helping me. And if it can be taken from them, it can be taken from me. And so
that's a chicken that's coming home to roost for a lot of people right now who did vote for Trump.
It really is. So such a great point there. One of the things I wanted to name from this piece was what Asha says about how folks are feeling in the face of the moment we're in right now. These feelings of being overwhelmed, these feelings that it's all a bit insurmountable, if you will. So Asha says, quote, "It would be a mistake to think this stems from apathy or even passive acceptance of the status quo. I see this pessimism about our overall political system as a result of political awakening to the levers of power that have rigged the system against the majority of us." And this is to your point, right? She goes on to say, as the book Secrets of a Successful Organizer, published by Labor Notes, argues, apathy isn't real. The barrier to people-powered organizing is not that people don't care to see change in the context of their workplaces, but that they believe the forces against them are too strong. And so then a little later on, Asha follows that pointed analysis by saying, quote, "This framework says that the role of the organizer, and I would add the role of the political leader, the movement communicator, and the influential community member, is to win people over to a different attitude. Centuries of organizing and bottom-up resistance to oppressive regimes offer a different story about what's possible." And I love that. That's so true. It's so powerful. We've talked about this before in the podcast, about so many examples throughout history of the power of people, the power of organizing, the power of coming together, the power of an uprising, right? The power of standing up against fascism and white supremacy. And as Asha says, we know what's possible. And that's what we need to hold on to in this moment. That's where we need to plug into. Yeah. That's where we need to be in community with one another, with our neighbors, with our family, with our friends, to stand up against what it is that we're experiencing now.
Yeah, definitely. Another great point that Asha makes is how feeling overwhelmed is designed to serve the interests of this administration and their billionaire buddies.
Yeah.
She says, quote, "And in this moment, what serves their interests is to overwhelm those of us inclined to fight for something better in the world, to the point that we either disconnect, revert to silos, or ignore what's going on." And these are some of the ways that we can react, and that's what they're hoping for.
Yes.
And it's also connected to how they've been trying to make sure we're separated, as you said. Like having us not be communities, but be individual units. And there's so much focus on the nuclear family. And that's also a political choice that is limiting in how we then interact with one another outside in the world. And so this is also connected to their overwhelmed strategy. It's built on the back of a long-term strategy of divide and conquer.
Yes.
And they don't want regular people working together to fight back against them, because there are way more of us than there are of them. And so, as you said, we have to hold on to the history here. Yeah. And we know that what we're facing isn't all there is, and we know that however we're going to respond isn't all there has to be.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, it's such a great point that she makes there about it's all of this serves their interest and not ours. And the idea of us being overwhelmed is absolutely a move in their chessboard. And they're hoping that it overwhelms us to the point of submission. And the whole point of this piece, which I feel like we're getting into application here, so I'm going to bring us there. But the whole point of that is to, hopefully we submit and we just let it happen. And we can't. So let's talk about application here. How does this piece and our conversation about it apply to our everyday lives? This is one of those pieces where like the whole thing is application, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like this whole thing is about where we are as a society, what is happening in our country right now and with so many of us. So all of this is application. But I wanted to share the ending of this piece because I think it's the call to action piece of what application in our minds represents. So Asha ends this piece with this, quote, "None of us are relegated to being passive observers. Any shift in the status quo requires a base that follows along and accepts or rejects a new normal. It was right-wing populism and the Tea Party and subsequent MAGA movements that have made the power grab of capitalists like Musk and Trump possible. It will be a movement of everyday people and community, faith, labor, political, and cultural leaders, brave enough to face where we're at honestly and to reject back to normal politics, who will make possible any shift in a new direction." Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take a mass movement of all of us to fight this fight and to win this battle that we are in. But as I said earlier, and as Asha said so beautifully, we know what's possible. And so we have to do this.
Yeah, my application is tied into that quote you just read. So sorry to repeat some things here.
Yeah.
But Asha says it was right-wing populism and the Tea Party and subsequent MAGA movements that have made the power grab of capitalists like Musk and Trump possible. And that's correct, especially because that right-wing populism was tied into the interests of right-wing elites and the wealthy.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And so those moments bought into the divide and conquer strategy that pits regular people against each other. And then Asha goes on to say, it will be a movement of everyday people and community, faith, labor, political, and cultural leaders brave enough to face where we are at honestly and to reject back to normal politics, who will make possible any shift in a new direction. This is the populism we actually need.
Yes.
It's a populism based in the grassroots working class needs of the country. It's not the populism that is tied into nonsense that right-wing billionaires want us to buy into. It's not divide and conquer. It's recognizing the solidarity in who we are and what we're facing as like regular everyday people. And so it's rejecting, racist narratives about who's to blame for not having jobs. It's rejecting racist narratives around affirmative action. It's rejecting sexist narratives around affirmative action. It's recognizing all of the ways that we are being divided purposefully and rejecting those things. And we have to take populism back broadly. It's been co-opted for too long by the radical right wing. And one of the core definitions of populism is that it's about the people. It's about regular people. And if you look at the core values of some of these quote unquote populist movements around the world that are actually authoritarian, that's not populism. It's reactionary politics that are really divide and conquer, along with other things that are tied up in hierarchy and systems of oppression. And so let's get back to some actual left-wing populism that is real and is going to challenge all this.
And it's for us, by us in so many ways. Absolutely. All right. I love that. Look at our applications being in sync there. Let's talk about homework. So what do we want to do to continue our learning and unlearning work once we leave the table today? I really appreciated this piece so much, and at the end of it, scrolling down towards the bottom, in these times, recommended some other pieces that Asha Ransby-Sporn has written for them. So I'd love to check those out. Also believe her writing is featured in the book, Who Do You Serve? Who Do You Protect? Police Violence and Resistance in the United States. So I'd love to add that book to our very, very long book list to check out. What about you?
That's a good one. I think I read that a few years back.
Yeah?
Okay. I think I picked that from Haymarket.
It might have been a Haymarket sale. Yeah. It sounds familiar. I could possibly already have it and just haven't read it yet. So
maybe. Yeah. I think it's one of those books that gets included in like police violence, like political education bundles that they offer frequently. So anyway, My homework is a book that Asha mentions in this piece that you quoted earlier called Secrets of a Successful Organizer, which was published by Labor Notes. And so the description says, quote, "We've distilled generations of organizing know-how into 47 easily accessible secrets. Put them all together, and you've got a step-by-step guide to building power on the job." And I'm sure some of those secrets can be translated outside of the workplace into the moment we're facing right now.
Absolutely.
And so I'd love to learn more about these 47 easily accessible secrets, which, as I say it out loud, it just sounds like an infomercial or like I'm grabbing your attention in some kind of scammy Instagram reel.
Yeah.
Stick around for my 47 easily accessible secrets for organizing. But it's a whole book that I would like to read.
I love that. Well, she quoted it here in this book and made a great application of it. I'm sure it's worth checking out. So I love that homework. Very good. All right. Well, folks, keep your head up, and as Aaron said so brilliantly earlier, like dial in where you need to dial in.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take all of us to meet this moment head on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aaron, my friend, you're up next time.
Yeah.
What are you bringing to the table in our next episode?
Well, speaking of books, I'm bringing a book. We got a little delayed reading this month's book, this month meaning February. So it's coming out in the first week of March.
Yes.
But anyway, the book is called The Black Anti-Fascist Tradition, Fight Back from Anti-Lynching to Abolition by Janelle Hope and Bill Mullen. And so it was a perfect book for the moment that we're in and also for Black History Month.
Yes.
But it was published by Haymarket Books back in April of 2024. And to quote the description, it is, quote, "the story of the fight against fascism across the African diaspora, revealing that Black anti-fascism has always been vital to global freedom struggles." And this is a book that is rich in its history and in its context, and it delves into so many figures throughout our history who have stood up to fascist policies, structures, historical figures, politicians, billionaires, all of the things. And so it's very good, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. I don't know which parts of it are going to come up in conversation because there's so much in it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a great conversation because it's been a great book to read.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the description of it as being rich. It's thorough. It's a really thorough examination of where this has shown up throughout history and how folks have stood up to fascism in so many ways. And so I've absolutely enjoyed it so far. I've got a lot to finish before next week, but I'm looking forward to it because it's been such a great journey. And I've learned so much from it. So I'm excited to finally get to talk about this book with you next week. All right, folks, with that, we want to thank you for joining us today. You know what we want you to do here, but in case you forgot, please follow, leave a rating and review, share our podcast with the people in your life, follow us on social media, including Instagram and TikTok, check us out on YouTube, and sign up and join us on Patreon to get notified about any new things we've got going on behind the scenes.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's not about us, but it is about all of us. And we'll talk to you next week.